Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. We're going to create this in After Effects and make changes to it in Adobe Premiere Pro. This is After Effects Motion Graphics Templates. Now, After Effects is definitely king when it comes to motion graphics, animated titles, show openings, and things of that sort. Most of the time, back in the old days, we would have to render these out and then bring them into Premiere Pro. And any changes would have to go back to the After Effects motion graphics artist, make a change, output another file, and on it went. But with the advent of motion graphics templates, you can now create the same quality motion graphics art and animations in After Effects, but an editor can change this. If you come from an enterprise, if you come from a big broadcaster, this is exactly what you've been waiting for, because it means that editors change the things they're supposed to change, like the name in a lower third, but they don't change the things they're not supposed to change, like branding and color. The After Effects artists can protect those parts and expose only the parts that are needed. Let's go have a look. Let's create right from scratch. I'm going to create a new comp. I'm just going to name this lower third. I have my effects controls and the essential graphics panel dragged over here on the left, just because we'll be using those quite a bit. Normally they're hidden in other panels. Up at the top, I'm going to grab a rectangle and draw a rectangle. And this will be the basis for our lower third. Now, we don't really care of the color of this, but I will change this because I am going to make two more of these. So once I have this one, I'm going to rename it. Simply select it, hit return, and call this main bar. I'll duplicate it and name this one top line. Now, right now, they're both over top of each other. I'll double click on this one and scale it. I'm going to hit my position keyframe, just tap the P key and drag this up. And for this, I do want to change the color, so I'll change this to white. I'm also using my scroll wheel, and that allows me to zoom in a little easier, just so I can line that up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to add another line at the bottom, but it makes sense to first animate the top line. And I want to make sure of something here. I want to make sure, yep, it's not happening. I need to, well, maybe it is. I need to have the anchor point in the center. And it isn't. Right now, you see the anchor point is up here, and I want the anchor point to be in the center of that. And After Effects actually has a command for that in the layer, transform, center anchor point, boom, there it is. And the reason I want to do that is the animation is going to make the center grow out. So very simple, rectangle. Instead of scaling the whole thing, you scale it one way, horizontal, and you end up at 100% and you scale it to 0%. Really easy. And it's a typical cool lower third kind of animation where something grows out of nothing. So I'll tap the S key for scale, go to the point where I want this to be 100%, and add a keyframe, move back, click in the 100% on X, hit 0, hit return, and now we've got our first animation. Pretty simple. I'll duplicate that, Control D or Command D on the Mac, and let's name this bottom line. Hit the P key, zoom in. Now, normally I'm on my 4K screen, so I can see this much easier, but I'll just zoom in so I can see it. And now we've got both of these animating. Boop, there we go. I'll go to the point of where they animate in, I'm going to drag the main part of my bar. So the starting point of the bar. So now they come up and then the bar comes up. It's okay, but it's actually kind of boring. We have to make that grid pattern and make it grow and make that kind of fractal noisy kind of thing happen. So let's add some effects. I'll make sure I've got my main bar selected. And in my effects, I'm going to search for fractal noise. And not the immersive one. There it is, fractal noise. And add that, and you can see what it looks like. It's fractal noise. I'll just zoom in, and that's what it looks like. It's static. It's not moving at all. There's a lot of choices in here. The only one I'm going to change is this to blocky, because I want this blocky kind of look in the lower third. An easy way to make this change over time without adding keyframes is to use an expression. I'm going to add it, and then I'll tell you a little bit about why this is important. So this property is called the evolution of that particular effect. It evolves over time. We can right-click and reveal in timeline. So now we're looking at the main bar and fractal noise, and you'll see there's evolution with a stopwatch. Well, just like the other property, if I click and add the stopwatch, I'll add a property. And if you're new to After Effects, you probably go to the beginning, hit that at 0, go to the end and change it to maybe 30 revolutions, and it revolves. That's fine, but we can do this with an expression. So instead of just clicking on here, I'll hold the Alt key on Windows, Option on Mac, click, and you can see an expression is started. I don't care what that says. I'm going to type time, lowercase t, with an asterisk for times time 100. If you have an extended keyboard, you can press the Enter key on the numeric keypad. If you don't, you can just click somewhere else. And now watch what happens. That will grow out. And now you can see it's starting to change over time. So if you come from programming or JavaScript, then you'll love these expressions. Expressions are essential, not to just doing stuff in After Effects. I've done tons of things in After Effects with no expressions at all. But if you're creating motion graphics templates, you better buck up on expressions. They are absolutely essential. And here's why. And I got to shout out to Tim Krakowski, who's the product manager for After Effects. He alerted me to the fact that if you do have keyframes, let's say you want to control this later on in Premiere Pro and you have keyframes here and you expose that property in Premiere Pro, and this will make sense in a second, it breaks the keyframes. You can't expose something in Premiere Pro and have keyframes in After Effects. What you have to do is you have to tie those keyframes to a static layer, like a null. We're not going to do that. That's beyond this demonstration. But you have to write that to a null, then you control the null in Premiere Pro. It's how all of the After Effects complicated motion graphics templates are done. They're all done with massive expressions. I'm going to open one that you have on your system. You can open this in After Effects too, and you will be blown away at how complex it can get. But we're going to keep it simple. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning here. So we've got the 2 lines and we've got this pattern. It looks kind of boring. We're going to add some color to this. And my favorite colorizer is tritone. I love tritone for the simple fact, let me go back and select my bar. For the simple fact that you have highlight, midtone, and shadow. So you only have to change the midtone to get a good looking effect. And you can see it's still making that evolution is still going on, but it's now using blue. I use this anytime I've got a motion graphic object that has highlights and shadows or a bevel and emboss. If you just apply a tint to this, then there's no more pure whites and pure blacks. It just looks like you've tinted everything. And for motion graphics, the more you can get the depth of the graphic looking good, the better. A simple tint doesn't work. Tritone, awesome. I wish Premiere Pro had this. It doesn't, but it does because now it's in After Effects, but I digress. Okay, so here's everything so far. There's our bar, comes up and it's doing that. Now let's add some text to this, and I'll just grab my type tool, click in that area and type add your text here. Now right now it's center alignment or center justification. I'm going to align this on the left. This is important in Premiere Pro. If you have this aligned a different way, if it's in the center as you type, it's going to go both ways, meaning that the longer line is actually going to go outside the frame. So if it's left justified as you're typing here, it's going to go out that way. Okay, so grab my move tool and move this down. We want to make this text appear. Right now it's there all the time. So I'm going to go to this point here and go to my effects and presets and get the good old typewriter. So it's in the animation presets, text animated in typewriter. We'll drag this on with the playhead at the point we want. We can change the keyframe later on. If you want to see where a keyframe, if you want to see all the keyframes, type the U key and you can see there's the keyframes for our text. Now our text pops up on the screen. If you want it faster, drag that and now it's faster. If you want it to be random, then open this up. You might have to close it and then open it. Open up advanced and all the way down to the bottom, random order is off. But if I turn random order on, it's still the same text, but it just won't show up in a linear form. It's going to be random. That's on, it's off, whatever. Okay. Now remember that grid pattern that we had. So for that, I'm going to add an adjustment layer in the layer menu, new, adjustment layer, and that's above the main bar. And I'm going to add the Gridler. There's CC Gridler effect. And as you drag this effect up and down, you'll see it make changes to this shape. I'm going to go to the point where the bars are fully extended. So that's where the grid pattern is going to start. So in my adjustment layer, I'm going to add keyframes, and I don't have to open it up down here. I can add the keyframes here for horizontal, vertical, and tile size. And the initial sizes I want for this are 20, 20, and 1. And you can see it makes this tiny grid pattern. Very cool. I'm going to move ahead. And because I've added the first keyframe, any changes I make will add another keyframe. And this is going to be 115, which is essentially looking like the effect has now turned itself off. But now we get this forming of the graphic. So it comes up, then the grid pattern enlarges, and boom. And then the text shows up. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so back in the old day, if I'm the motion graphics designer, I now render this out as a transparent video, give it to the editor, and they drop it in. But I have to type in the text before they get it because it's a video. This is where motion graphics templates kicks in. So I'm going to grab the Essential Graphics panel. I have to pick the comp. So that's the lower third comp that we're working on. Now, the easiest thing to do is click on this Solo Properties, and it will show you all the properties that you can add to this template. The only issue with this is it's huge. So I'm going to close that up instead. And I'm just going to add the properties that I know I want. For instance, I'll go to the text. I'll open up the text and drag the source text in here. This is how you allow someone to change the text in Premiere Pro. If you want to allow them to change the fonts, click in here, enable fonts, enable font size adjustment. You can also enable faux styles, which is the fake bold and fake italic. I'm going to leave those off. You can change the name of this, add text. It can say whatever you want, okay? So that's the first one. The next one, one thing that this fractal noise, one problem the fractal noise can have is that there's too much contrast in here. The fractal noise has a default level of dark and light contrast, and you have to pick one color for the text. So the text is normally it's a dark or a light color over the opposite background. But this background is already pretty complicated and very contrasty. Guess what we can add? A contrast control. So let's go to the main bar, and we'll open up the effects and the fractal noise, and here's contrast. So I'll drag that up, and now you can change the contrast. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. Now, what about that color? Well, that's, again, why I chose that tritone. So if I go to the tritone and only drag the midtones up, and I'll name this bar color. Now, when you click in here and choose a different color, it's going to choose a different color. By the way, this Essential Graphics panel can also be just used right in After Effects. You can create an incredibly complex After Effects composition, give it to someone who's maybe a little less adept at After Effects, but expose just the tools they want. It's not just for going to Premiere Pro, but for us it is. Okay, so we've got the color, which, by the way, I'm just going to go back to that blue. We've got the color, we've got the font, we've got the contrast. What about changing the text color? That's a little trickier. If we open up the text color and open up the text, we'll see there's no setting for text color. The text color comes from the character panel over here, which was not available in Premiere Pro. So the way I get around that is I choose fill, and not the eyedropper fill, this fill here, and I'll drag that on the text. And you can see it adds red by default. I'll change that back to white. Go back to the Essential Graphics and open up the effects because we've added an effect. Open up fill and drag color above the bar. And I'll name this text color. I'm going to save my project. And let's preview this. So the two bars come up, the grid pattern comes up, and the text comes in. Oh, maybe that text should come in a little quicker. Okay, so I'm going to tap the U key again, remember, for the typewriter effect. So once the grid appears here, that's where I'm going to drag my text, and I am going to make it show up a little quicker. Now let's look at that. Goes out, it's in, text comes up, we're ready to go. One last step, and this was added after motion graphics templates were created, the ability between the two. And this one is really important, and that's creating responsive design time, which is something that Premiere Pro had. And here's why it's important. When you create an After Effects comp, it has a finite duration. You have to tell it this is 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 minute. And if you don't do this, you can't resize the duration. You can't extend the lower third in Premiere Pro. Really easy way to do this is in the comp in the composition menu, responsive design, create intro. You can create intro or outro or both. I'm going to create an intro, and you can see it creates this here. I'll drag the right side to make sure that it's after the last animation keyframe. So now here we go. There it goes up, goes out, and the text comes on. All right. I'll save this one more time. I'll name this Gritty Lower Third. And now export this out as a motion graphics template. After Effects wants to save. Okay. Now it's saved. And now it brings the dialog box up where we're going. We could go to any one of our libraries. I'm spitting this out to a local drive. In fact, for this demo, I stuck a folder in this folder for it, so it's easier to access in Premiere Pro, and I'll show you that in a second. You can warn if the template uses fonts that are not available from Adobe Fonts. So if you have outside third-party fonts you've installed, you make this, then the person you're giving this to has to license those same fonts. It's much easier, just everybody uses Adobe Fonts, previously called Typekit. You can also warn if After Effects needs to be installed in order to customize the motion graphics template. You can add a whole bunch of keywords here to make it easier to find. I'm just going to click OK. Let's go to Premiere Pro, and I'll go to the graphics workspace. I'll go to my local drive, and I'll go to this specific folder that I created. Give it a second, and it's going to read that folder, and they'll show up. You can do this now in the Hamburg menu, Manage Additional Folders, and I just pointed to that folder. You can add as many of these as you want. I'll show you this saffron coffee one in a second. So that's my lower third. One thing I didn't do is set the poster frame, which I should have done that. And that sets the poster frame, so that would show up in here. So I'll drag this to my timeline. It will always stay red and has to be rendered. And here's my graphic, and you see it shows up. You'll notice that there's no duration, so now I can drag this as long as I want. Responsive design takes care of that beginning. To edit this, select it, and in the edit menu of the Essential Graphics panel, here is what we can do. So I can type the name. I could change the font. I can change the size. I can change, remember that contrast setting? So I can back that contrast off a little bit and change the color. Maybe I'll grab this rust color down here. I can either change the bar by clicking in here and picking a color, or use the eyedropper and pick this orange. Maybe that one's a little bit better, a little darker. So there's my pattern, comes up. And it will always play slow. If you want this to not play slow, then you have to either render the timeline or right-click and choose Render and Replace. Now be careful if you use Render and Replace, because Premiere Pro, once it renders it, it removes the Mogurt out of this timeline, so there's no changes. So that's the trade-off. My suggestion, if you really want to render this, is to Option or Alt drag it up to another layer and then render that one and turn the other one off. Okay. The last thing that's important that is different between, and by the way, let me just show you this. This is really important. Remember we had keyframes? Here's the graphic parameters. Here's all this stuff. There's no stopwatches like there are here in Motion. None of these are keyframeable. The keyframes can't be changed in Premiere Pro that were changed in After Effects. This is where expressions come in. If someone needs to change the speed of something or the rotation of something, you have to write expressions and then create an expression control in After Effects to expose it in here. way beyond this tutorial. But here's what I'm talking about. Let's go back. Let's put a distortion. All right, let me get these sizes correct here. So let's drag this here. So that size is at 0 and goes down. So it's just this crazy flash. Boom. Okay. So we make a change. Huge distortion going on. And let's call this gritty lower third 2. Save this. Export this out. Make a change. Okay. All right. Let's go back to Premiere Pro. Back to here. Give it a second. Okay, there's the second one. I've already changed the text in here. This new one has the other text. If you hold the Alt key on Windows, Option on Mac, and drag this in, it keeps the color change. It keeps any customization I did here, but you'll see there's the new, you can see our flashing distortion stuff. Let's change the color to something really obvious so we can see. So you can see. I wish Premiere Pro Mogarts had this. So just so you can see what's happening, I brought in an After Effects comp, but I made all these changes to it as a Mogart. And then there's a new Mogart that came in. Well, if you Option or Alt drag it on top, it keeps all the local changes. It just updates to the new Mogart. Oy, beautiful. Okay, let me show you one that I did here. This one's pretty simple. It's the sports counter up on the top left, and you can change the text size, you can change the text, and there's eyedroppers. This is tritone. So if I wanted to change these colors, I can actually pick team colors here. I can pick these players and have that. And that tritone, you can see, keeps the highlight and the shadow. Another one I did here is this growing logo that grows out of the bottom. It's a tree that grows up. And remember I said about protecting the branding, the only branding change that's allowed is to change the black to white. Now I did put an eyedropper in here. I could have restricted this to a checkbox, black and white, but now you got the same logo and it's white, and you can't change the branding on that right there. Okay. All right, so this doesn't make After Effects any easier. It doesn't make After Effects any faster. It just is a way to restrict all the millions of things you can do to allow an editor to make instant, easy changes in Premiere Pro. So, but you can't mess with the keyframes. You need, you know what? Let's look at this one. This one changes how many of those graphics are on the screen. How many matches? 1, 2, or 3, plus all of the colors. Let's open this up in After Effects, which you can now do. The newest version of After Effects allows you to open previous and current Mogarts. So if you've exported out a Mogart, you can import it back in and completely change this. If you're not used to After Effects, get ready for an enormous project with a lot of things connected. So this is the final one right here. And we've got the ruler showing, and we've got this title safe. So your first thought might be, well, there's only a few layers in here. It's not that complicated. These aren't layers. These are comps in comps. These are controls made to control this. So if we're in the Essential Graphics panel, you can see there's the number of matches right there that someone has created. If we twirl this down, you'll see all the effects going on inside here: flip, blurriness, align, and there's tons of things going on. And this is an expression control. If we select all of this, reveal all animated properties. Now look at how complicated this is. You can see expressions in there, more expressions, more expressions. Each one of these comps has expressions on it. If you open up the comp itself, you'll see it has more layers. If you select that and then choose Reveal Animated Properties, now you've got more expressions in there. We go back to another one. Let's go back to this background loop. Select all of that. Let's look at all of those. And look, even more animation properties going on. The bottom line is this. I don't want to scare you. Look, I just created something simple that was useful as a lower third. And the only bit of expression that I did was the evolution. There's a pick whip that you can do so that you can point from one property to another property. And maybe I'll have that in the future. AE Scripts is a great place to go to see examples and copy and paste examples. You can, of course, open all of the After Effects Mogurts that come for free with After Effects, Creative Cloud, and Premiere Pro, and open them up and have a look. And they're all pieces that you can use and reuse and do whatever you want with. I mean, they can get very, very complex. So I wanted this really to be for two people, for editors like me, like you. Hey, now we can have or create simplified motion graphics templates in Premiere Pro that look way more advanced than the stuff you can do in Premiere Pro. And if you're an After Effects motion graphics designer, then get on the bandwagon and start offering these up. They're a very hot commodity. Everyone's looking for them. And I know from my time working with Adobe that there are tons of enterprise companies more than ever are now moving all of their motion graphics into this world. So Adobe is conducting tons of meetings across the world where they're going into the top broadcasters and saying, here's all your motion graphics, which, by the way, are already created in After Effects. This is how you can take all of your current stuff and make it available to all of your editors who know nothing about After Effects, yet they have all the same control and they can protect all of your branding. Whew. All right, I've been dreading this tutorial for a long time because it's pretty complex and I had to make sure that I did it right. I hope I did a good job. All right, if you're new to Video Revealed and you found something like this informative, take a moment and subscribe. You want to support us some more? Join our wonderful PayPal donors. There's a link in the description on the front of the channel. You can donate once or monthly, and thanks to all of our PayPal donors. If you want to be notified of our weekly tutorials, you got to ring the bell down at the bottom. I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to get you informed about all the tools you have at your fingertips.